Super excited. Hello, it is me, Christian Jackson, joining you live for this Transformation Tuesday, what I'm calling the Grace Gap Live Workshop. If you have felt like you have been bracing yourself for something to go wrong, you waiting for this other shoe to drop. When things are okay, you don't feel okay. Your nervous system is like shot. I'm going to get into that tonight. Do you wear your shoulders as earrings? Like, this is what we're getting into with the Grace Method tonight. I am the Daddy Issues Therapist, and I am the creator of the Grace Method, which is a 5 step framework. Are there steps? Well, you take them in whatever order you need to, but it's a 5 step framework to help you move through your attachment issues with grace. So, yes, as the Daddy Issues Therapist, I have been here since 2020 telling you what it is you can pay attention to when it comes to the jacked up and toxic relationships that you have with other people, that you have with yourselves, and, the God of your understanding. That's what the Grace Method helps you move through. And so, what we've been doing since last week is going live every Tuesday this month here in July 2025. And for whatever replay, whenever you're watching this, I am hoping that you engage. It is really important that you guys know that I enjoy dialogue. Like, we're not in a Zoom room together, but we are live. And I'm watching the chat as best I can here on IG. Hey, you guys, I see you popping in. And hey, you guys, on Facebook. This is such important information because you get to take control of what it is that you are trying to work on when it comes to having healthy relationships. Now, some people may be new to the page. I have been called lots of different things. One of my favorites is the Daddy Issues Slayer. Hey, Mike. It's been really fun to watch you guys be receptive to what's going on here, as we are not here blaming dads or moms for that issue for our problems, right? We're talking about how you can bring awareness to yourselves and what you can do in order to address that lesson that you learned that you've hung on to for so long. The Grace Method helps you do that. Maybe you don't really know how to identify what it looks like to work the Grace Method, which is why this year I created the Grace Gap Quiz. If you've noticed the pivot, it's really a chance for you to understand what the deficit is. So there's a quiz, there's a link in my bio on Instagram. It is linked here on Facebook for you to go take the Grace Gap Quiz, which is what we went over last week. You can leave this right now, go take the quiz, come back and tell me where you have room to grow. When you answer like 7 questions, which we went over last week, go ahead and watch the replay. Then what you can do is try to figure out, am I struggling with connection? So last week, that's what I shared with you guys. I told y'all that as an extrovert, I was very surprised at my response when I got my own results back for the quiz about how I love people. I really love being around people. People watching is a lot of fun. And yet, I have a problem when I am like ashamed of something, or I am wrong about something, because I feel like, and I tell myself that I'm going to lose something if I'm not all the way right. Because the way I have set up my survival is that everything has to go in a certain pace and everything has its place, which is why if anything is a threat to that, come on, somebody, then I may retreat. I may be like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to handle things when they're wrong. And I was just talking to my husband about that on our walk earlier today, where I really do struggle with saying that I want people to see me, but do I really want people to see me? So I got into that last week. A couple of you guys told me last week too that you also struggle with the connection. And so that's something that my mom shared last week. She also has that connection grace gap. And it's really important that you know where your gap is. And so you may surprise yourself. And when you take this quiz and you join the email list, you'll get what your results are, as well as, of course, I don't like to keep you hanging. So you'll also get some resources as to what it really means and how you can work through the grace gap. When you're here live with me, when you're watching the replay, what you're going to get out of the Grace Gap Live workshop is obviously a chance for us to kind of talk in real time through the chat, through the grace gap and what that looks like. I have been working the grace gap myself. I have been working on connections. I've been having really hard conversations with my friends, with my husband today, and I was able to work through something with him because he has been attentive and I actually have been working on my connection. So instead of hiding from him, we had some really good open discussion. It was really nice. So the grace method actually works. It's really nice. And so I'm never going to take you to a place that you've never been before, without having tested it myself, right? Like, I can't take you where I never been. And I ain't gonna just say, hey, here's the grace method and not work the things, right? So I'm really excited. Figure out what your grace gap is. Go take the quiz. Come back. Let us know what yours is. I'm here live again on Facebook and Instagram. And every week you will get this as well as some prompts. So I'm curious, if you did not get into the prompts last week, this is a little reminder. We talked to what the grace method is, your ground, rescript, adjust, connect, and enforce. Tonight we're getting into the G and what that looks like. Connection was my grace gap, and then I'm going to end with a couple of journal prompts. And so, what's one way you've been quiet to keep the peace? That was a question from last week. I told y'all that I would be silent in order to keep people in my life because I was so afraid to be abandoned, so afraid to be wrong and be rejected. So I would not say anything because I am so conflict averse. And then that doesn't always go well, right? So the way that I set up my protection bubble around myself in survival mode when I was like 12, remember I told you about Ray Ray? That don't work at 39. Okay, so I talked about the silence that I've used, not just to weaponize, because I could be passive aggressive sometimes, right? But also to keep the PEACE, which was an illusion because it wasn't real, right? So I was able to kind of sit with that this week. And then the other thing we talked about is like, what did you avoid saying or doing because you didn't want to lose a connection, didn't want to lose control you thought you had, right? Tonight we're going to get into grounding. We're going to get into G. And I want to say that, again, if you were here live, I appreciate you. Thank you for popping by. And when you come by for the replay, tell me what it is that you are really good at, that you already have like a pretty good feel for, because we all need some tips. I am not the person that thinks she's the smartest person in the room, and we're not going to do that, right? So please share in the chat. I'll do my best to get in live and see what we got going on, because it's just me. It's team me, okay? So, what does grounding really mean? Safety comes to mind, and I'm curious about what you guys think. It's not just this feeling of calmness, right? Like, if you're talking about grounding yourself, what usually comes to mind for me is that idea of mindfulness. I am here, yes, just putting my feet in the grass, in the sand. Maybe you live by the beach or by a lake somewhere. How are you connecting to your senses, right? Mindfulness comes to my brain when we're thinking about grounding because we're engaging our senses. What are you seeing, feeling, tasting, touching, and hearing that brings you to the moment, right? Because if we are so anxious, like I was earlier today, before my lovely husband connected with me and grounded me, right? Then I was already on 10 thinking about things that are happening in the future that have not even happened. Anxiety is going to keep you in the forefront. And then the depression, those symptoms are like, yo, you ain't never gonna be nothing. And then you playing all those things, right? That is going to keep you stuck in the past, right? You're replaying old tapes. So, how do you bring yourself to the present? You ground yourself. And I do have to say, and you guys let me know, when you were talking about grounding yourselves, it's not always super safe. So, I want to talk about spectrums here. Let's get into this flow of things, right? Because that's how life is. We're not going to put ourselves in a box. I can't be here and guarantee a safe space, like some people like to say. I like when I've heard on the internet people say there's a brave space, that you come here, and like we were telling our 8-year-old the other day, that you can do things scared. I have been doing a lot of things scared lately, so it's really more of a brave space. How brave are you with yourself to stand still and sit down? And as I talk to you, I'm talking to myself, right? Safety is not always going to be 100%. So I'm here to say that we can also accept safe ish, right? Grounding, you can be safe ish, safe enough and in your right mind enough to be like, okay, what is my next move, right? Because we have to get into some space in our brain where we are bringing our frontal lobe back to itself enough to meet a basic need. So let's talk about biology. We know about fight or flight. Your trauma response may be that if a bear comes, you are going to run. That is your flight response, right? And then, yes, hey, Kelly over there is talking about awareness and acceptance. That's where we are. That's grounding. That's what grounding is. If I'm aware and I'm accepting that there's a threat, then yes, I may run. I may flee, right? That's that fight or flight. I may fight. Some of you, have you heard me say on the internet, you may square up with the bear. Maybe I'm going to freeze. I'm going to shut down. That's a lot of what I do. And I did not realize that until I actually started sitting with myself because I'm tired of me and something got to change. I am a freezer, right? That is who I am. I don't know why, and I'm learning why, and I'm learning how to get out of that by doing things like working through this grounding piece. And then there's also the fawning, FAWN. There's the people pleasing aspect of it all. When you are faced with a challenge, let's just call it a challenge. It may not be trauma, it might be something hard. When you're faced with a challenge, how do you respond? This is that awareness piece that someone in the chat in Facebook is talking about. If you are aware of how you respond, then you know what your brand or what your needs are when it comes to grounding yourself properly. Because everybody ain't still enough and great enough to sit and meditate for 10 minutes. That's not me. I cannot be that person. So when you are talking about grounding yourself, what is it that you need in the moment? It might be a little snack. Let's talk about basic needs. Come on, Maslow. Let's not make this hard. We're talking about grounding yourself. Sometimes that trauma response that is really that way to keep you alive and keep you comfortable ish, keep you safe, is really more so about how can you get into one space where you can make a mindful decision, one that makes sense for you in the moment. Maybe you just hungry. Maybe you're thirsty, which is why, as a therapist, I would have snacks and still do, or some water, because you ain't talking about no trauma if you're hungry. Anybody gonna really be able to focus, right? Mindfulness, aka grounding. I don't know if I'm that guy that uses it interchangeably, but I will today. Grounding and mindfulness. Engaging your senses. What do you smell around you to bring you and snap you to today so that you are not in that space where you were traumatized? Now, I do have to say there's a caveat, right? Trigger warning, three, two, and one. I did a lot of survivor treatment or support for women who were sexually assaulted. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual assault. I know what it's like to not feel safe in your body. So maybe this is where you take a step back and you say, well, I don't necessarily know, Christian, like this don't make no sense. Being in my body is not necessarily safe. So I dissociate, zone out, daydream, whatever word you want to use for disconnecting from your body. Perhaps that is your realm of safety. And I get that, right? That is something that is super real, something you must know about yourself so that you can know what you respond to best when you are trying to figure out how to ground yourself. Let me know if that makes sense. I need to know in the chat because we have to talk about these different experiences that you are having. When we're working through the grace method, this is not some cookie cutter, one size fit all situation. I want you to have the freedom to be able to work the grace method the way you need to work it. I tell you its steps. We understand that there are just different avenues you can take, but I'm giving you the voice and the choice. Come on, trauma informed, right? Like that's me giving that back to you in terms of how you actually use the grace method. So that is what we're talking about today, is how to really kind of get yourself rooted. When I was journaling this week, while I was kind of sitting with my feels, then a word kept coming to me like rooted, right? The anchor that kept coming back to me today, or like not today for my today prompt, but I was journaling today and I kept hearing the word rooted. So when you hear me say grounding, I want you again to take control and you name what that thing is. What is your word for grounding? It may be something different. What I really am trying to drive home when it comes to how to use the grace method is like you're going to use it the way you need to use it, and that's just, it is what it is. So let's get into what I wanted to get into, which is my trauma response as like kind of who I am, right? I am an overachiever, a people pleaser, and perfectionist in recovery. Let's be clear. I really am working on it. I would say for years I'm working on something and really not be, but I really am. Like I'm tired. Last week I might have mentioned like I am tired of me. And that was a lot of the conversation I had with my husband today, is like he can see it on me, just the weight. Right? So that goes back to connection. Since I'm working on connection, I don't want to hide those things from my husband anymore. I want him to know when I'm upset because I can't. Why should I look strong, right? When he is there to kind of take some things. So overachieving for me meant that if I don't do this thing, then it won't get done right. I will not be safe. I will lose something. I will not be okay. So that is my narrative behind overachieving. When we get to rescripting next week, which is the R and Grace method, then I want us to kind of think about what narratives you're hanging on to that are related to you being an overachiever. Because we're going to talk about how to like rescript those things. Too many rules can hinder people from working a method. Yes, use the Grace method how you need to. Thank you, Jess. So we're talking about overachievers struggling to ground. That is me. Okay. And I told y'all that I would kind of get into this self sabotage mode and conversation about what I've been going through. There have been some moments in my life, my career, especially trying to build my business, where I'm like, you know what? I know that I'm great. I have all the things. People tell me all the time. It is weird when I get a compliment. I'm just here to work, right? I'm usually driven by fear. Like I'm scared I won't have, so I have to work. That's been some of my situation the last couple of years. And it's been unfair to me and what I've built and who I am and whose I am, that I have taken this like value away from what I've who I am, right? And I rely a lot on what I can do for people, because I'm like, if I'm not in the conversation, then I don't know how safe I'll be, right? I'm so disconnected from myself, not anchored, not grounded, that I'm doing all the things. Let's talk about how we literally cannot multitask. For us overachievers who think we can have all these tabs open, it is not a thing. There is research that says our brain literally is only able to focus 100% on like one task fully at a time. So yes, there are things that are going to suffer if I'm not 100% focused on this thing. How am I managing my time? Why am I not grounding myself enough to say, you know what? I've listened to my body. I know I'm tired. I know I'm hungry. I know that I just can't emotionally hold that right now. Maybe I won't do that thing today. Overachievers, we don't understand that language. What you mean I can't do 50 things at once? Huh? Please. Like, I don't know how many overachievers I have in the room with me tonight. I see y'all here, and let me know in the chat when you rewatch this. There is also this people pleasing aspect. And for someone who is really tried to like, I'm coming in tune with who I was when I was younger, and this Ray Ray character who also has a soft side. I was talking to my friends about that today. She's not just a reckless, wild girl. She's also the one who's really like tired, really lost, really confused sometimes. And so if I don't ground myself enough, aka I don't pay attention to what she needs enough, then I do have the tendency to just disconnect and want to mess everything up. Yes, catch this, for trauma survivors like myself, it is difficult when things are okay. It is hard when there is no chaos. So, therefore, I try to create this false sense of control by self sabotaging, doing things I know don't make sense. Like, ooh, I'm going to go buy 3 pair of shoes. And I'm going to have to pay that thing. Because, I mean, $20 a week for 4 weeks, that's nothing, right? Because I need a temporary fix. Like, I can control that, right? At least I think I can. Because there has been a time with that little payment hit, and I was like, oh crap, I forgot that's the phone bill day, right? Like, why do I create that false sense of control, that chaos? Because maybe I'm used to working through chaos. Maybe it's weird because I don't know who I am if I'm not managing something for someone. Maybe it's weird when no one needs me. Who am I if I don't do this for you? We're getting into rescripting. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Because next week, those are some narratives we're going to have to try to learn how to address, right, with the Grace Method. So we're talking about grounding. Am I unable to feel rooted, anchored, because I am so distracted by all the things I'm doing for everybody else? AKA telling myself things that are like driving this narrative of being scared and I won't have anything. I can't change anything if I don't feel safe first. Safe ish, even. Remember our spectrum, the room that we're giving ourselves, right? Chronic stress, people pleasing, perfectionism, all those are things that contribute to why overachievers like myself find it difficult to ground. So if I don't, like for me, if I'm black and white, as someone who was like, been through some things, then I'm either okay managing a bunch of crap at once, or I'm grounding myself. It's like I can't find an in between. Like that's the hard part. And so I want to invite you, as you're using the Grace Method, like let's think about what pace you need to go. Can we go at the pace of grace? I've heard that, Pastor Mike Todd said that before. But what's the pace of grace for you? We normalize chaos because it feels productive. And I really am thankful for finally trying to put some things and pages and people in my orbit, like the Nat Ministry, right? I follow that page on Instagram. It's encouraging me to slow down because I need reminders that Christian, you don't have to do it all. You literally cannot do everything without sacrificing these pieces of yourself. So I've done that so much where I have given pieces of myself away, like I talked about last week, because I want you to be okay. I want you to like me. I don't want you to abandon me or reject me. I want you to be here for me, etc., etc. And it's a distraction. So, like, we create all these things because of this fear, and I'm talking about myself, right? And it's really hard to pay attention to our needs when we have all these things in our orbit and we're not organized enough. And that is where grounding comes in. I'm wondering if this is not your grace gap. Perhaps you haven't taken the quiz yet. Maybe you guess. Like you're pretty good at grounding and like rooting yourself. Let us know what that looks like in the chat. How do you ground yourself? For me, I want to get into some tips. I have recently experienced, or at least discovered for myself, that using my AirPods and listening to rain music. Nope, not the ocean. I am very specific here. When I'm talking about grounding tips and how I know I'm feeling safe and like in my little cocoon of safety, then I have specifically chosen rain sounds and I really enjoy it. One of my friends she has some experience and been trained in brain spotting. Hey, Kristen, I see you here. And, she's introduced me to this brain spotting like CD. And so that's kind of where it started because I actually do like the biology of this bilateral stimulation where you get different tones and, decibels at different times in your ears. Like that really kind of brings me to a, oh, even now, just that deep breath was really nice. Whew, I didn't realize I was talking so quickly, right? So you tell me, what is your brand? What is your go to for grounding yourself? What does that do for your body? When I have that rain in my ear, it helps me to pay attention to even like just now. I was just even thinking about it, settling that deep breath in my chest. I didn't realize I was kind of holding my breath here tonight, right? So, like, what is it doing to your body when you were able to sit still? What do you notice and what do you need? Grounding, another word, we've talked about being rooted, anchored, whatever that language is for you for grounding yourself. Then for me, it's really slowing down. Like that is an intentional conversation I had with my husband today. It's like even my brain, maybe I'm not physically moving around. Like we went for a walk today and he was like, dang, you took a fast shower. And I was like, I'm trying to be more open about how my anxiety shows up so that he understands me better. So he was like, dang, you took a fast shower. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm moving. I got things to do. That is anxiety. That is me thinking I have to be somewhere 10 steps ahead, getting ready for y'all tonight. And literally, y'all, it was 2 or 3 hours before I even had to be on here. So I need y'all to know your anxiety. Yes, people say they have it and they know they have it, but how deeply does it inform all of your actions? So sitting down, taking a slow, deep breath, like I'm blowing out a candle. Yes, that is a really nice way to ground yourself. It just, if nothing else, it kind of just like jerks you into this moment. Like you need to breathe. When we are in that mode of being traumatized, we are not grounded, we are all over the place, we are floating, we're dissociating, which is it's a clinical term for being like disconnected. I mentioned earlier that I've treated survivors of sexual assault. Some people don't want to be in their bodies because that's where the danger happens. So you have separated yourself physically and emotionally. You're zoned out. Everybody ever walk around or they'll just say, you ask somebody how they are, oh, I'm here. Or I'm existing. Like you're floating through life. That's dissociation, okay? Grounding is somewhat of an antidote to that because it's going to ask you to bring everything back to center, come back into your body. And if you are only able to handle being in your body, quote unquote, for just a few minutes before you go back to doing your thing, then that's it, right? Safe-ish. Where are you on that spectrum? What do you need? What is your brand again of grounding? This is part of your healing. It's how you're going to do the things. We People have talked about blowing out deep breaths like it's a candle. My mom says music. I do like a scented candle. You know, all these things, remember, we're talking about being grounded, grounding ourselves, being mindful. This is really about engaging your senses, because otherwise you may be in some other world thinking about something that you are going to try to control that you don't necessarily have control over, right? We cannot predict or really exactly predict an outcome or control an outcome. What choices are you making up until the point that you actually have to be there? How many times have we decided that we wanted to try to come up with plans A through C? And it sounds cute until it's not, because A through C has not necessarily worked, right? So, what are we going to do? Body scans that will help you understand my tension is here in my shoulders, or maybe I'm wearing my shoulders as earrings, right? Is my chest tight? What are you noticing? And maybe this week, what you do is just take inventory of where you find tension. It's something as simple as that. So when you were talking about grounding yourself, again, taking a step back, why what's the buy-in? Why do I need to ground myself? Write that down as something that you want to answer for yourself so that you can actually, like, you know, convince yourself to actually do it. I know that I needed to be grounded when I am like on autopilot. When I am going through my day, it may not be the same day or same thing every day at work, but you know your routine up into and after, because your workday may not be the same like mine isn't. I know that I don't really feel fulfilled. I am always nervous. I have to make sure that I'm on call, ready to take this call, ready to do this thing for someone else. It could be your kids, it could be your husband. You may not be working, but you are working because you got to run a household. Maybe you were in a position where you know that you're supposed to be doing this thing, but you can't get this thing. It's not quite in reach. Maybe you're not working at all. You're in a whole new space and you don't know who you are because you're not in this role. You don't have this job anymore. You don't have this responsibility anymore. And now your body's going in shock because it's doing something different. That is how you know you can benefit from grounding. That is how you know through the grace method you can do things like, what am I telling myself? And I'm getting ahead, right? But I'm gonna give you a little preview for next week, right? What am I telling myself that says, oh, I don't know who I am without this thing, right? We're gonna get into that next week. Now, y'all tell your friends, please share this video. Tell them to get to know who I am, because next week I think it's gonna be really good, because we're gonna get into like what I call the meat of therapy, of counseling, of really trying to figure out how you're gonna make that change, because it's all about what we are telling ourselves. But today, if we back up and I don't get ahead of myself, then in order to handle the grace method, that part that says, hey, I need to rescript what I'm saying to myself, you're gonna need something to back on, to fall back on. When we're doing trauma work, we must ground ourselves, aka we must have a great way to kind of bring ourselves to center and really engage in healthy self-care. Because once you get to that point in your healing journey, however that looks, where you know that you'll be triggered and there'll be lots of things that will just kind of be dug up, you're going to need to have a space to come and breathe, right? Grounding may be journaling, right? And this is where I might have alluded to a little while ago, where you can kind of get into this space where you're mixing up the letters in the grace method, right? Remember, we're grounding, we're scripting, adjusting, connecting, and enforcing. That is the grace method, right? I talked a little bit about my husband today. He is my healthy person, so I've connected to him and he helped me ground. When we're journaling, you're grounding yourself, even with the pen stroke, right? Your handwriting, the color pen you decide to use. That is mindfulness, because you're engaging your senses in that choice and how you decide to write to yourself or write about your day or whatever it is. And so, speaking of that, as we wrap up, right, because I don't want to be on here for a whole hour. It's a lot of information. I want you guys to go ahead and take this back with you. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions. Thank you for engaging so far. Two prompts, right? Last week I ended you your our time together with the prompt. This week we have different prompts that are related to grounding. Let me get over here on Facebook. Oh, okay, we're good. So, prompt number one, we are going to get into grounding prompts for journaling. So this week What I want you to do is pick one or both of these questions. You can come back, share it in the chat, DM me, let me know what you come up with. I'll be working on these as well. Where in your body do you feel the most unsafe lately? I have alluded to this already when we're talking about making a change. Then to get that buy-in, take an inventory of where you are, right? So if you know that you are feeling unsafe, like your stomach is always in knots, there is a mind body connection, folks. You can't get away from it. That is anxiety physically showing up in your body. My cautionary tale to those who do not manage their anxiety: my anxiety handled me, okay? And now I have Crohn's disease, which is an irritable bowel syndrome where my guts just get knots, permanently inflamed unless I take a shot for the rest of my life for every 8 weeks. Which, thank God, my treatment is working ever since 2020. But that's how stressed I was. I mentioned earlier, as an overachiever, I basically trained my body to be stressed at all times. At all times. Okay, so if you needed a cautionary tale to take care of your anxiety, there it is. I am open book. I will tell you what you need to know. That is where I felt unsafe at that time. My gut was telling me, "Ooh, Christian, get out of this job. Stop talking to these people, right? Stop listening to this music. Stop following this page, right? Start eating healthier." You know that your body is reacting when you're like, "Oh, you got to get off this greasy food." I am 39 years old, okay? I'm at that space in my life where I'm telling y'all I'm almost 40. My husband and I are talking about being more healthy. This is where it comes in. Where's your body feel unsafe? And again, exchange that word. Unsafe may not be the word. Maybe it's uncomfortable, right? Like you just notice that there's something going on. And then ask yourself in the second prompt for the week, what would safety feel like instead? This is something that we do in therapy where we ask the magic wand question. So if you had a magic wand and you could feel safe and you could feel grounded and you were like the guru of all gurus as a mindfulness expert, what would that look like? Go ahead and start to claim and manifest what that looks like for you. That's exciting because that is also where you have control. It's not necessarily it's a goal, it's a dream unless you just don't do anything. But we are talking about goals. We're talking about moving the needle forward, right? Every week for the rest of the month. And I'm having so much fun being back live that I might just do it just indefinitely. Like this is a good time. So y'all let me know what you think and how you've experienced, being live with me or just watching the replays. But as we wrap up, let's get into our plan. If you decide that you have identified where you're not feeling safe in your body, the magic wand. If I had this magic wand, I know it would feel this way. Um, what's the grounding ritual? Take it a step further. What's one thing, just one, like you gotta take notes about how it's affected you. Like if you know that I'm gonna try breathing for a minute before I even get out of bed all week, take notice of how you feel this week. See if it works. We're trying to build what we call a toolbox of your grounding skills and your self care skills. And we're going to get to that later in the Grace Method. But why not get a head start? If you know grounding has not been your grace gap, where you're pretty good at grounding yourself and you have a ritual, share it here in the chat. Whether you replay or here live, let people know what you do to ground yourself. When we're talking about a ritual, if you already have one, maybe try something new. Just keep adding on to what you're doing. I am super elated that you guys are here. I love it when I get to come live and engage with you. Please, 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 as I wrap up here, consider someone who could use this message. If this is your first time being here at the Grace Gap Live workshop, then go back and watch last week. It's on my page. I'm going to go ahead and post this on my YouTube as well. Engage, share what you think, give us some thoughts. Please be kind and respectful to each other in the chat. Come back next week because we're going to tackle the thoughts that keep you stuck. Okay, I've already alluded to that a little bit because they kind of like run into each other, the parts of the grace method. Remember, the grace method is yours because your healing is your own. I'm just here to give you suggestions. Again, things that I've done for myself and I've worked with my clients over a decade when they're feeling like their nervous system is just off. If you're just joining live, thank you so much for getting here. Please pause it, go back and watch it. I only gave y'all about 30 minutes, so that it's a sizable chunk, just enough so that you can get what you need, but hopefully not too much where you're sick of hearing my voice. I've been Christian Jackson. I'm so excited you guys are here with me, and I'll be announcing how we can do this more regularly and live face to face, hopefully with the cohort that we can start and do this for a 4 week term. So be on the lookout for that announcement. And please, 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 please like, share, let your friends know that I've been here. Thank you so much for your support and just being here in the space with me. I will see you next week and on the interwebs in between. Y'all have a great day. Bye, Facebook.